This is a Film Stories original podcast.
If you own a vehicle with less than 200,000 miles and have an auto warranty about to expire or no warranty coverage at all, listen up. CarShield has a low-cost month-to-month vehicle protection plan that covers more parts than ever. Visit carshield.com/audio to find out how you could pay almost nothing for covered auto repairs. Drivers who activate this vehicle protection today will also receive free roadside assistance, free towing, and car rental options at no additional cost. Get your free quote today at carshield.com/audio. That's carshield.com/audio.
We made this.
Welcome to the X-Cast, The Truth is in Here. I'm your host, Sarah Blair, back again. And today, my guest is fellow X-Cast showrunner, Kurt North. What's up, Kurt?
I'm all right. How are you?
I'm doing okay.
I'm half asleep, so well, you're gonna ask me loads of questions like you've just done there, and I'm just gonna respond by something completely different. So
I mean, it's 6 a.m. here, just after. And what time is it where you are?
Just after 11, but I've had a really hard week.
Yeah.
So my brain's a bit frazzled.
I've been doing a lot of writing, and so we're both frazzled this morning. I guess we're going to do the best we can, right? But this is a good episode. We are talking about SR-819 this morning in the 6th season. Is episode 9. Can you believe we're already at episode 9?
It's amazing how quick we're going. And I think that already we're getting into a kind of a little bit of a pattern, and it's great. You know, we're getting into the run of it. We're kind of everything we're doing is enjoying it. We've already had quite a few specials as well, which I'm really enjoying. You know, so we've had Triangle specials, we've had Dreamland specials. You know, so it's so far season 6 has been a blast, and so it's not just the 9 episodes as well. So remember to look at the Patreon later on because there's plenty of stuff going on for season 6.
That's right. We're cruising along. So this episode aired originally 17th January, 1999. Do you appreciate how I did the British date there?
I didn't notice, but well done.
Yeah, you're welcome.
As long as if you don't do that Tony Black accent again.
That was so terrible. That was terrible.
What's happened to my body?
My body. This episode was written by John Shaban and directed by Daniel Sackheim. So we've got Skinner. This is a Skinner-centric episode, Kurt.
I've been thinking about this over the last 24 hours, and I've got some alternative names for this episode, or what it should have been called. I've got 2 of them.
Tell me.
So obviously it's SR-819. I think the other option is My Struggle, because we're talking about My Struggle in the 500th. And the beginning of this actually literally starts off like a My Struggle, which is interesting. And the other one is Throbbing Veins, Banging Cars, and Walter Skinner.
Talk about throbbing and banging with Skinner in the same sentence. I just can't.
Throbbing Veins, Banging Cars, and Walter Skinner. That's what I'm going to call it from now on. And it's just brilliant that it's season 6, episode 9. If you put those 2 together, you get 69. So this is the start of the episode, and this is where we're going.
Kurt, this is why we're friends, Kurt. You get me? Technically, Skinner flatlines in this episode.
Yeah.
He has another near-death experience. Wouldn't it be weird if this was just if he got hit by that car in My Struggle 4 and then woke up in the hospital? Wouldn't that be weird?
What, as in
what if all of the rest of the entire X-Files was Skinner's dream, is what I'm saying here.
So from season 6 to 11,
yes.
It's just... Yeah, I could go with that.
Season 6
is experimental enough, and I think there's plenty of argument to say it could be.
Why not? It's the X-Files. None of it makes sense anyway. All right. Out of 10, What would you score this episode?
I would go with an 8. Solid. I think it goes back to elements that I really like. Although it is, as you mentioned, a Skinner-centric episode, it's actually got the 1970s conspiracy vibe about it. It's kind of harkens back to stuff with Senator Matheson, and I'm sure we'll talk about him later. You've got this kind of stuff lurking in the background, things like the Tunisia stuff, and it's kind of the conspiracy elements to it as well. And this time, that kind of ticking bomb situation where there's got to be a resolution by the end of it, and it might not necessarily be something like some of the conspiracy thrillers, like the Parallax View, for example, where the guy's on the run and you're trying to follow him while a fugitive or something like that, but it still has that element to it that the stakes at play here. He's only got 24 hours to live, so yeah, I think it's solid. I think Chris Knowles has mentioned a couple of times, and I would agree with him on this one in particular, that season 6 can sometimes feel a bit outer limits or Twilight Zone-y. I can imagine this being retooled ever so slightly to be like one of those episodes. It could be a one-off if you retooled it a little bit, but I think it's nice to get back to some of the kind of serious aspects of the show, because we've had 8 episodes of what people would call X-Files light. I don't have a problem with that. You don't have a problem with that, but it's just nice to have the change of pace when we get into this particular episode moving forward. People would probably argue it needed to be a bit earlier, but I'm quite happy with where it lies in the episode run as well.
I think I'm going to cheat a little bit. Is that okay? I'm allowed to because I'm a showrunner, right?
Yep.
Okay, so I'm going to do like an average rating. So 12 for Skinner.
Right, okay.
Like 3 for conspiracy stuff. Like, is this a mythology episode?
It is, in a way. I'll talk about it when we get to it. But yeah, I'll talk about that, yeah.
Okay, 3 for mythology-ish.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to say like a 6 for atmosphere and mood and stuff and plot, pacing, all of that. Like 9 for Mulder and Scully. So like somewhere in the midst of all that, like if you throw all those numbers together, I'm going to say like a high 8.
It's not necessarily, there's mythological elements in it, but there's something I would have liked the show to have done post this, which I'll talk about later. But yeah.
IMDb score is 8.1 out of 2,413 votes at the time of this recording.
So have you got season 6 in front of you there? What's the previous, what's the kind of average over the last 8 episodes?
Let's see.
Because you've got the seriousness of the beginning and Drive, and then you've got the middle run of Triangle, all that kind of thing. So
beginning 8.4, Drive 8.6, Triangle 8.8, Dreamland 1 and 2 are both 9s, like low, like 9.1, 9.0. Terms of Endearment drops down to 7.9 and Ranking 7.6. Then SR-819 up to 8.1. So it's all like mid 8s.
Yeah. And
then when you get down to Aguamala, it's 7.5. Alpha is a 6.5. It's the lowest.
Isn't that a surprise? Sorry for those fans. And I like Andrew Robinson, so we'll talk about that at some point. But I think it's interesting season 6 because there's the episodes are, depending on how you view it, but I think the episodes are I think we've talked about this before, the watchable. So I don't think that there's anything that is really that bad. So I think that reflects that. The fact that the memorable episodes, even if they're not like what people would want in some ways, if people were wanting more of a Dehan de Valets or a Nicey and 731 or something like that, or even like a Home or something, they're still memorable episodes. They're kind of popcorny that people might stress as. So whereas this one isn't. I think Drive is obviously something that's more like a film-esque kind of thing. So yeah, I think that's good company to keep.
So yeah, overall season 6, high standards to live up to, and this fits right in with the middle of the road with the 8.1. So all good stuff. Do you want to dig in?
Absolutely.
Let's talk about some throbbing veins, Kurt. In our teaser, we definitely have an emergency. We're in the emergency room and something is happening. We've got therapeutic plasmapheresis. What even is that? We don't know.
I think we find out later it might be like just suck all the blood out of him and put it back in again and filtered.
It's like a fancy way of saying dialysis, right? You just
pretty
clean
much.
the blood, right? They just had to use the fancy word for it. They had to use a medical term. I do like this teaser because I don't know, did you think every time I see this, I hold my breath. I'm like, is it Mulder? What?
Yeah.
No, it's not Mulder. But you wonder, is it Mulder? You assume it's Mulder because they're talking about Scully.
Well, originally it was going to be Mulder. The actual plan was that John Shaban was writing, wanted to bring Skinner into the fold because he's kind of gone missing. You've got him in charge of the X-Files. And I think we talked about this, I think, in the beginning, didn't we? Where it would have been nice to have at least Foley and Spender on a case or something that we actually see some form of the X-Files, because all we get is the beginning with them two. Spender makes an appearance, outside of that. We recorded last week when we did Terms of Endearment, he appears at the beginning, but that's all we get. And so Skinner, by pure way that the show's been written at this point, hasn't got a lot to do. So the fact that they wanted to bring Skinner back into the fold, and John Shaban, as I say, wanted to bring Mulder in. David Duchovny's obviously signed the contract. They've moved to season 6 because of that. That people who have any kind of inkling of what the show's doing at the moment, who are interested behind the scenes, well, no, you're not going to kill David Duchovny off when he's just signed a new contract. And, on Walter Skinner, because he's been on the periphery a little bit, there is that danger. So, but I'm the same as you. Every time I watch it, and I don't tend to do that very often, every time I watch it, I look at it and think that's totally directed at looking at Mulder. You're thinking it's Mulder, because even to the point where we move to Skinner's arm, it waits to show you who it is rather than giving you it straight away. Oh, it's Skinner. So it's I think it's a nice little reveal. I'm not too sure whether the media res thing works as a way of bringing in the show. I think they maybe could have done it a different way rather than having 24 hours later or earlier kind of thing. I'm not convinced, but I do think the actual way they did it was actually quite effective for the reveal that it was Skinner.
I agree about the media res. I think this almost feels like it would pull up right after the credits, and you'd have something else, and then you would open with the hospital right after the credits.
Yeah.
Instead of opening with the show at the credits. So I know what you mean about that.
But then again, I suppose it's built into the show as well, because you've got the 24 hours over the course of the episode, and then we start to look back, don't we, when we get the reveals. So, when Skinner's remembering stuff, or, basically when Skinner remembers parts of what he's seen, the touching of the hand, the bearded man, all that kind of thing, the long-haired man. So I suppose it's looking both forwards and backs, and I think it might be maybe a bit lopsided if you did it another way, thinking about it. Every
time Dr. Cabrera just looks down at him and says, "Let him go," I scream. I'm like, "No, don't Skinner." Even though I know what's going to happen, I'm just like, no, I just don't like seeing him like that. I mean, I think that's probably one of the reasons you would assume. I think everyone would assume that I watch this episode a lot. I don't, because of that reason. I just don't like seeing Skinner like that. I don't like seeing him down. It makes me sad.
No. So you don't watch the end of Maestro Go 4 a lot then?
It doesn't really rock my socks. So.
Those poor little legs.
Yeah. They don't reach the pedals so well.
They don't. No.
Tell me your thoughts on this voiceover.
Well, that's the same. I struggle. It sounds like it hasn't really resonated with me, because I haven't watched SR-819 for quite some time. I'm not sure if I've watched it. I don't think I've watched it since The Struggles came out. So it was blaringly, see what I did there? Blaringly obvious.
Nice.
It was blaringly obvious that it just felt like that. It felt like Shaban was writing in a Chris Carter mold. So that was in itself interesting. Mm-hmm. But I like the Skinner's always been that character who falls in between the cracks of he talks about the sensible hold and all that, and I think it's really good that we talk about that. We bring it in later in the episode as well, so it is double handling in some ways because we actually have this conversation with Scully and Skinner later. So I'm not sure whether or not we needed it, but it is an interesting dynamic because I think it also relates to Senator Matheson later on. So it's like a recurring theme, and it always bugs me a little bit. And I think sometimes this bugs me a little bit with a few of the monologues, and I suppose you could fit it in with what you were saying about the Vietnam stuff when Mulder talks about the Vietnam, that he's talking after he's died. So you could take it as that it's an out-of-body experience again, that he's talking about his life and stuff. So I suppose if you're looking out there, thinking it through, it could have that thematic resonance of that. I'm not usually a fan of that kind of monologue, though, where someone's like gone past on this world and we talk about this is the day that I died kind of thing. But I think thinking about it, it works here because of that Vietnam stuff. I think I would have been a bit more bothered had that not happened before.
Right. I think it is interesting to take this kind of and examine it in the context of Avatar, and then again in the context after we get Kitten and My Struggle For.
Yeah.
Avatar and Kitten, we get those stories from Vietnam from Skinner. And again, in one breath. So combining all of those, and we get just enough backstory to make this understandable, but it just makes me want so much more Skinner.
Yeah.
That's all this does for me, is make me want more, because I love how he says he's trying to play the middle and he purposefully chooses this course and balancing all these interests, and he chooses by not choosing.
Yeah.
And I love that last line. It says, "So death chose for me." And it brings all that back too. And so in the light of all of that and putting it all the pieces together, which we don't have very many pieces, we don't have nearly enough pieces, but it paints a really interesting picture of Skinner, which is why I love his character so much, because there's so much that we don't get and so much that you can infer.
Yeah, I mean, I will talk about this a little bit later on, but the idea that, and I understand the criticism that we keep retreading this path with him. What I like about this is that he hasn't now got a choice at the end of this episode. There's no choice. In Zero Sum, for example, you'd always feel there's a way out. There's some clever way they can write this out, that you can get around the fact that he went and cleared up this mess and Mulder's after him in Zero Sum. In this one, we're not quite sure what's happening to him. He's finally coming round and opening up to the dynamic of Mulder and Scully, because he's realizing he wants to be their friend now. He's realized that he wants to be the part of the team and get fully behind the quest. But it's rudely ripped away from him. He can't do this anymore. The only issue that I then have is that this really isn't developed beyond this. And as I say, that's something I want to talk about when we get into some of the deeper aspects of this episode. But the fact that he physically can't would be a really interesting dynamic to play, and I wish they'd done more with that with Skinner.
Agree. 1,000% agree. So let's move on. We've got 24 hours earlier in a dimly lit boxing gym. And can I, okay, guys, I'm sorry. I'm just going to apologize now that I'm going to swoon over Skinner this whole episode. It's just going to happen.
It's so, okay. I'll just keep saying throbbing veins and you'll be fine.
Listeners. So just forgive me. This is just how it's going to be. So
I think the dichotomy of me trying to talk about narrative and conspiracies and you doing that will fall in the center ground somewhere.
Swooning over Skinner's sweaty biceps.
I've never heard you refer to him as Slugger, though.
No.
Would that wouldn't be a pet name for you? For him, for you, was it? No.
Not at all.
All right, Slugger.
I can think of a few other names. Yeah, I I do not like this trainer guy. He's trying to be like Rocky.
Yeah, he's trying to be Mickey from Rocky.
Yeah.
It's
not working. He's not doing it very.
No,
and then
he has been in stuff, that guy, though, hasn't he? What's he been in? Sorry, I'll cut this out.
I don't know. I did not see his face. I was too busy looking at Skinner's arms. I'm not gonna lie.
I've seen you in the presence of Mitch Pileggi, so I know what it's like. Yeah. Oh, it's Marty in Godfather.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. It's quite ironic. It's called Mickey, isn't it?
Yeah. His name's Mickey Knox.
Yeah.
So, Mickey Knox.
And he plays in a
the trainer.
Do you know what as well? He's in a film called I Walk Alone in 1947. His name is Skinner.
Amazing.
I haven't seen that film, but there you go.
I haven't either. But there you go, X-Files. Pulling it all together. I love this show, man. Skinner's boxing. I would go to the gym and watch Skinner box. I would have liked to see him get some moves in, I think.
Yeah, well, I do like on rewatch, though, because he gets the punch to the ribs that I don't think I spotted on first watch. But then, there's that dilemma, or the question mark over his bruise later on. Mm-hmm. And when I watched it the second time, because obviously I wasn't really thinking about it when I watched it. I watched it the second time, I was like, all right, okay, well, they've added that in. That's nice, like little touch, that, because there's the question mark over what is that? Is that just a bruise, or is it part of what's been happening to him? So I do like that.
That's smooth. But, okay, one thing that I'm wondering, because that bruise is where you can see it centers around like a little hole-ish thing. And the bearded man, we're going to say, I mean, guys, if you don't know who the bearded man is, like, I can't even help you with that. But for the sake of surprise, because they went to so much effort to keep his name out of the credits, we're going to call him a bearded man for now. The bearded man walks by. He puts something in the boxer's hands. He touches the boxer before he gets in the ring. So that's when it happened.
That's a very good point.
That punch was when he got infected with these nanobot things.
I never caught that.
Yeah.
And he didn't get affected by Ortega at all.
I only noticed that because I originally thought that I wasn't paying close attention, and I thought it was Skinner for a second, and so I had to go back and look, but it was the other boxer guy. So the other boxer guy probably didn't even know that he did it.
No. He definitely, because we get the flashbacks later, and I do remember. I didn't factor that in, and that's silly of me. Because obviously it is, isn't it? He touches on his wrist, but he never gets infected on his wrist.
Yeah.
Because it would start from the wrist, because he says about where did you touch.
But Ortega has or Gel, he has the gloves on.
No, because that's what I thought originally.
Oh,
it goes back to
okay.
magic tricks, because that's how magic tricks generally work. Mm-hmm. So it's got me, and I'm very surprised at that, because I've researched this quite a lot. I just again thought it was just the bruise, but that's totally where he's been infected.
Yeah. Yep.
Man, this is why we talk about these things.
I do like at the very end of this scene the dreamy music slowing down like a carousel or merry-go-round. Did you notice that? I like that.
Yeah. The music was up for an Emmy, I think, wasn't it? I believe.
Was it in this episode? Because I mean, half of it is from the movie, so
half of it is from the movie. I'll talk about that as well.
In the hospital, the nurse is cute. I feel like she's been in this before.
Do you know all I thought that? And this is obviously talking about Skinner again. Is what would Sarah do in this position if you were that nurse? Because obviously it's from his point of view, isn't it? I'm just thinking that Sarah's looking down at poor old Skinner, looking after him. Every time I think it now, and it's all because of you.
I mean, she does kind of look like me a little bit. Yeah, I like that he laughs a little bit and indulges the nurse when she makes the Mike Tyson joke about the ear. And he's just like, yeah.
Yeah, we've heard it before. It's getting tired
now. He doesn't think it's funny, but he thinks it's cute when she says it, because she's the cute nurse. I feel like if he wasn't laying there almost dying, he might have asked her out for a date. But no. Yeah.
That's the second contemporary reference that jumps out at me, because we talked about Triangle. I talked about Triangle, and you've got things like the Spice Girls and
Stevie
the White
Wonder
House.
earlier.
Stevie Wonder as well. So again, this references kind of stuff we haven't really heard too much on pre-LA, and we just seem to have more. And whether or not that's like because they're in a different culture and it's starting to seep into the show a bit. I think there will be references in 1 to 5, seasons 1 to 5, but it just seems there's a lot in a short space of time, and there seem to be all these contemporary references, which hasn't something that's not really jumped out at me before until this season.
It feels like they're trying to make the one-liners as cultural references now, whereas before they were just clever quips for more general stuff that were not as specific.
Yeah, I think the only kind of references they had were things like in Clyde Brookman's, stuff like that, which is like older, much older references, like the 60s, 70s, maybe, rather than actually, yeah.
We get more Skinner t-shirt and some sweatpants.
If you own a vehicle with less than 200,000 miles and have an auto warranty about to expire or no warranty coverage at all, listen up. CarShield has a low-cost month-to-month vehicle protection plan that covers more parts than ever. Visit carshield.com/audio to find out how you could pay almost nothing for covered auto repairs. Drivers who activate this vehicle protection today will also receive free roadside assistance, free towing, and car rental options at no additional cost. Get your free quote today at carshield.com/audio. That's carshield.com/audio.
That's all I got. Sorry, I got stuck
there is
on...
an electronic voice that starts saying...
Oh, that's important. Important plot point. Let's talk about that.
I mean, he's got a t-shirt. He's talking about something, just like he's going to die. But, all I'm watching is this white t-shirt.
I can't hear, my ears start ringing. I can't hear anything. So, important plot point. The countdown starts, or is already started-ish. We don't actually know what... I mean, we know that it started at the boxing ring, but so he's got a 24 hours to live business going on now.
Does he have 24 hours to live, though?
Well, yeah, that's what's not really clear.
Because it doesn't really, does it? Because I was going to say his name, which we won't do yet. Bearded, long-haired man can just flick a switch whenever he wants.
Yeah.
So it's not like so he's using the 24 hours as a point, but I mean. Is that 24 hours because of the bill being passed on the following morning?
See,
that bill's meant to be passed the following morning?
I was hoping that you could help me understand the whole bill stuff, because none of that makes sense to me.
Right. Should we talk about that now so we can get it out of the way? And you can
let's do it.
Look at other things
maybe
later.
It'll help later.
Okay. So my understanding is that there was a bill, which is the nanotechnology. It's being used by the syndicate because they are. It's a general scientific find. It's something that's happening around the world, kind of thing, and it's something that the WHO, World Health Organization, are looking to get funding for, to look into the research of nanotechnology. But what's been happening in this episode is that there's been gross abuse of the trading and delivery of such. So basically, the syndicate have got hold of it and are actually exporting it without the knowledge of everyone else. So they're actually using it for their own nefarious circumstances. So that's coming out of there. Now, the big thing for me, and it doesn't really get touched upon, I think it's too oblique at this moment in time, and something I would have liked to have seen in the future, is that it's coming from Tunisia, and Tunisia is where we fight the future, because the diplomat is from Tunisia. So it would have been nice, because obviously in Requiem we have a character that we bring back, don't we, who's in a Tunisian cell, and that's the next time we see that person. So that whole aspect I would have liked to have seen more on, and we'll probably talk about it in more detail later. But so that's what's happening here, and obviously the long-haired man is part of the syndicate and has access to this stuff, and they want to stop because Skinner's looking over the bill because of these exports that are happening, which are a gross negligence of what the system should be in place. A scientific study should be in place. They should be well restricted. Blah 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 blah. And then it's not happening. So Skinner could effectively shut it down because he needs to investigate why all these leaks are happening. So that's why they want to control back over it. They want to pass the bill so that they can continue on with this stuff behind the scenes.
So you've got the syndicate dealing with supposedly all the black oil from Fight the Future in season 6. And then they also have nanotechnology.
We see this is where I think they could have gone down a different strand with the stories. And I think that...
And Matheson and all of that, yeah.
Yeah, so season 6 for me has the tail end of the syndicate story because we've got Two Fathers, One Son coming up. I think personally this could have been the start of a new conspiracy. And we've mentioned Rausch in the first episode. We mentioned Rausch in Redux, that Rausch is being a corporate industry rather than a government one. That you could have had kind of like cooperation with each other, and you could have brought a new conspiracy out from Tunisia via this method, and that would have involved Skinner more and the X-Files a bit more because Skinner is currently in charge of the X-Files before we get Mulder and Scully back. So you could have brought this new conspiracy in over the top of Two Fathers, One Son and bring that underneath.
Right. And tie that in with Redux and the aliens are not aliens and all of that stuff. Yeah.
Because I think nanotechnology, as it's being used here, is all about controlling people. It's like being able to control people the way you need them, or you could use it as a mass weapon. So you could use it as government conspiracies on things like trying to control the population rather than aliens. So you could have gone down that route.
How cool would that have been? Imagine what this show could have been with just a little bit more planning. I mean, golly Moses.
That's the way I would have liked to have seen it.
Yes, that would have been so good.
Yeah.
With all this season 6 and everything, and like, I want that show.
But it just seems like it's a wasted opportunity that you've put Skinner in this position. You don't really do much with him later with it. You don't involve this technology again. Well, you do because obviously this is the method of control. But you mentioned Tunisia in Fight the Future. You mentioned it in the beginning. You mentioned it here, and you mentioned it in Requiem. And I don't think you see it anymore. So, and Strughold being, this is me going all conspiracy again, Strughold being all corporate and the leader of the syndicate kind of thing. We don't know what happens to him after Two Fathers, One Son. It could quite easily have been a new kind of, I wouldn't want to retread old ground, but you could have written stories beyond that, which is more about corporate espionage and stuff like that.
I'm going to write that book.
Alien, you go write that book for me.
Yes.
I'll buy it.
Let's do it. That would
anyway.
Be, good stuff.
Well, that has, even it sounds like I'm waffling. That has, I think it's a turning point for this episode. I think it could have gone off in a different direction.
Yes, it's so good. So I guess I'm going to have to write it now.
After you finish the third book, obviously.
The 6th book. I'm already up to book 5. Or no, I have plans. Yeah, I'm only on book 3 right now, writing it, but I've got 3 more planned after this. So that's super.
Okay. Well, when we end up show running the
that's right.
The reboot of the X-Files, we'll do that.
There you go. Let's do it. The good news here, we've got Mulder with his pencils. Because obviously, what else does Mulder have to do besides stay late at the FBI and throw pencils at the ceiling? This is his life now.
It felt like my life on Friday when I was at work. I actually really, really like this scene because for me, it's relaxed. It's something that can happen in the world. You know, it's got nothing. There's an element of it's the X-Files and Mulder and Skinner, but you know, Mulder's just sitting there. You see someone walking past and go, "What's he doing here? Let's go and have a talk to him." You know what I mean? It feels more like, you know, I have genuine empathy or care for this guy. What's he still doing here? The one thing, if we'd recorded this maybe 8 months, 10 months ago, it wouldn't have been funny, but I found hilarious of this scene. Skinner saying, No, I was having trouble seeing. It's nothing. I just didn't think I should drive. Right. So
I know
for those people in the UK with our Dominic Cummings, who decided to go for a drive to test his eyesight and drove from London to Barnard Castle, which is like a 500-mile trip. He went to Barnard Castle during the COVID crisis, and he went to stay there, and because he was coming back, he took a trip to Barnard Castle, and this trip was maybe a 30-minute drive, but he took it because he felt like he was having trouble seeing and wanted to make sure he could drive back down to London. So this scene was particularly funny when Skinner says that, no, I was having trouble seeing. It's nothing. I just didn't think I should drive, which is the right answer.
Oh, yep. Can we discuss Midge Pledgey's acting in this scene and coming through from the last scene too? He's great. But just because, you and I copied you by downloading the transcript and using that to go by.
Yeah.
And reading it on the page is one thing. But then you see it on the screen and you see his acting and you see how he makes these words come to life.
Yeah.
And he brings so much
he does
to the role.
Yeah, there's a gravitas to his performance here, which I think is really good. So
natural too.
Is it commonplace for people in the FBI to have a couple of drinks, and whiskey and whatever, and sleep one off? I would say probably. Okay. With what they deal with, especially an assistant director who has a couch in his office, why not? Well, I suppose, yeah. And they do it in military and stuff like that, don't they? When they're talking, say like the walk, yes, yeah, that episode, yeah. There's a lot of bars around the FBI building, not too far within walking distance. I would say it would be plausible that they might go walk to a bar and then head up to the office to sleep it off or whatever before they go back. I do like the moment when he says, okay, tell me what you think about this. He told Mulder about the phone call, but he says that was just somebody yanking my chain. But he knew in his subconscious that it was important enough to mention and to tell Mulder about. Yeah, I think that's quite nuanced, personally. I think that he wants to still maintain the distance that he likes, because Skinner is a very distant person. He very, very rarely opens up. I think it's quite right that that Mulder is someone he would open up to, but he doesn't. Later on in the episode as well, he's when he starts to say you should be in a hospital, and he's like, I'm going to go out and find this guy, kind of thing. So I think it's a really nice nuanced thing that they make it sound like it's a trivial thing. It's just someone yanking a chain. It's an FBI agent, assistant director of the FBI. You're bound to get death threats on a regular basis. You're bound to get this, that, and the other. For me, in his head, he's like, this is different. This is something real and something working. And by mentioning it to Mulder, he knows Mulder's, like a dog with a bone, isn't he? As soon as you give him a little bit, he's going to bite onto that and never let it go. So I think that he's done that quite coyly, personally. Isn't it very consistent with Skinner's character that he would have that moment of vulnerability when it's him and Mulder together, because he's done this before. He's told Mulder these things before that are very personal, extremely personal things. And he's only told Mulder. Maybe he feels like because he's mentioned those things before that he can share that bit of information with Mulder. But then when Scully comes in and they're talking about it again, he waffles a little bit. He's thinking, maybe I shouldn't have mentioned that. Maybe this is something more. And he feels like he has to depend only on himself instead of being able to trust these two other people. And it just gets me every time, like, oh, But and he loves Scully. And he doesn't want to make it feel like he's suffering. He doesn't want to worry her. It's nothing. It's nothing. Scully is going to go prodding. She's a medical doctor. I don't know if you know, but she's a medical doctor, which we'll touch upon later.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like she's gonna. Don't get me wrong. It's like it's good writing. It's not. I'm not thinking this writing because that's what we all do. No, it's fine. It's fine. No, it's fine. It's fine. It's all right. And then someone touches it. No, you're not fine, are you?
Nope.
Nope.
One other thing in this scene I want to mention is Mulder says, "This morning you woke up." Skinner says, "I woke up." And Mulder goes, "Alone?" Because we know what happened in Avatar.
Avatar, yeah. I instantly thought Avatar. I was like, oh, not this again.
Yes, alone. He's just like, it's fine. Like, he could have called that nurse. Just going back to the nurse.
I think it's good because it's given us an indication there's stuff we might have missed already. Because even though we haven't seen that on screen, it leads us to the inevitable when he starts to remember other stuff. It's like the fragmentation of his memory. Mm-hmm. Something that probably talks about a little bit in Triangle, actually, the fact that memory can be a subjective thing. So the fact that he's remembering various different aspects as things get on, as it becomes pertinent to the episode, memory doesn't quite work like that. But it's nice. It's nice that they're actually layering this in to give us the thing. Oh, we're going back through a memory again. We're doing this. We're doing that. But it's when it becomes relevant that actually, having said that, it's we're going to memories we've already seen on screen. So it's actually for us to remember stuff, which I quite like. That I quite like that idea.
I do also like thinking about how that's how Skinner's mind works. He's very analytical. I feel like he's military, ex-military, retired military. He has that kind of brain. He's an assistant director of the freaking FBI. He's got to be just brilliant. He thinks about everything. He's constantly analyzing everything. Constantly, he's got a great memory. He's got to be in order to be where he is.
Yeah, and I've been in that position. I'm sure we all have as well. Actually, thinking about what Mulder actually says, it's just slow down. No, slow down. You're rushing too much. Mm-hmm. Like one step at a time. Think about what did you do. It's very Mulder of him. It's almost like he's a psychologist.
What?
Maybe.
No.
Maybe he's using his powers of psychology.
I don't think
he is a psychologist. Is
no. He's not.
No,
he says he's not a psychologist.
Well, he isn't. This season 6 is an alternative universe, isn't it? Because he's not a psychologist. But just before that as well, I wanted to mention about the fact that when Mulder's talking to him, just before the memories, he starts to remember stuff. Skinner talks about that he's so paranoid. It's you're not even on the X-Files anymore. And it's like, well, is it about the X-Files or is it about Mulder? So that was a really nice question. And this is something, again, which kind of relates to something that X-Files would never do, but it would have been interesting to see an X-Files quality. I'm talking, this is quality with the way I would reference this, is that Skinner says, you are so paranoid, Mulder, you're not even on the X-Files anymore. And Scully says, no, but you are. You still supervise them. And this is what I mean by early in the season, where we would have been nice to have seen some more focus on the show, on the actual X-Files itself, because we're getting this abstract thing of what the X-Files is. We know what the X-Files is, but we're not seeing what Spender and Foley are doing too much. Yeah. It would have been nice to see that, but it also would be a paved way to bring in, and this would never happen, like a CSI kind of spin-off kind of thing. You've got the element of what we were saying before with the nanotechnology. You've actually been able to split off a little bit and create more of a franchise, but at this point it's all Mulder and Scully, and they're just not. It feels to me they're not confident enough to go down that route. And this episode kind of reinforces that, actually, because this is going back to what it might have been in season 2, season 3. This is kind of like a feeling of season 2, season 3. Avatar you mentioned, and some of the season 3 stuff with say 19731. It's got that kind of feel. But it would have been nice to have more of a CSI kind of approach with at least maybe. It would be very difficult to write it, but maybe have something that's a bit more nuanced with the fact it's not about just Mulder and Scully. There's other factors at play.
Can you imagine the fan outrage that would have occurred?
I wasn't after to spend a Foley one. Okay, I'll just be honest with that. You know, as much as I think Foley is a great character to be involved in the show, I would not be interested in a Foley spender thing. I would have been interested in a Krychek Marita thing. Personally, I think that would have worked, and I think that was, if you were heading in that direction, as you get into season 7 and Requiem after season 7, that would have been the time, I think. But it could have involved this conspiracy, this nanotechnology, that kind of stuff, the more corporate issue, you know, and stuff like that. So that would have been nice to have. That was the time to really split off and maybe do bits like that. Whether or not it be a spin-off show or just within the X-Files itself, it would have added more of an ensemble, you know, like the Last Supper that we see in Requiem, for example, you know, that they were trying to build, you know, and instead of likes of Doggett and Reyes, which I wouldn't change that for the world. Don't get me wrong, the X-Files is what it is now, but looking back, these are the opportunities I think they could have gone down.
Okay, we're gonna get off this call and go break our show, and then call Netflix.
Yeah.
You and me, Kurt, we're on it.
We're on it.
This is gonna happen because this is good stuff. Okay. I have this last line. Skinner, he yells, "If this man poisons me, I'm gonna put a gun to his head and find out why and ask him how he's gonna make me well." And I have, get it, Skin Man. So
yeah,
just have
I
to
alluded to that before.
Skinner
It's
being
very
a
kind of
badass
like,
there.
yeah, I'm not taking any crap from anyone.
Not Skinner Man. Nope.
Not quite as powerful as Pucker Up and Kiss My Ass, but that's definitely up there for me.
Exactly.
And it's the quiet distillness, that the way he says it. It's like, you know, I'm not messing around here. You've messed with me now. I'm going to have to get this sorted.
That's right. Ooh, he means business. Whew. All right.
Take a breath.
I need to go get some water. I'll be right back. I do appreciate these aerial shots of the cars. I love that.
That's from the film, isn't it?
Yeah.
So again, that takes me out of the story.
It's still like, pretty to look at, but yeah.
It's pretty, but it just reminds me of when Mulder's going to see Foley.
Exactly. Well, he was on his way to...
film.
Yeah. He was on his way to... They're going to Chevy Chase here. And...
In the movie, they were going to the army base, weren't they?
Yeah, which is in Chevy Chase. I think.
Is it?
I'm pretty sure it is. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that makes more sense. I feel a bit... Because isn't there an episode... Is it something like Wet Wired where there's a scene or Blood or something where they use an elevator and it's taken from Speed?
Oh, it's in Bethesda. My bad. Sorry. Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'm sorry.
No, it's all right. I'm just saying, is there another... I've got in my head that something, I don't whether or not it was X-Files or not, it might have even been Millennium, where they use the footage from Speed. You know, when the lift falls... Or the elevator falls. Sorry, I use the American term, and they use stock footage, and it kind of takes me out. If you know the film and you know the TV show, or you know the movie, or you know the clip, it just felt like a little bit like that, and that's what the music does as well for me. The X-Files music. I mean, I know they started to do it a little bit in season 5 before we saw the film, but in this one, it takes me out a little bit.
Bethesda-ish, but Chevy Chase is set. It's 2 miles. It's 2 miles from Chevy Chase. So it counts. Okay. I'm going to count that.
Okay, well, that makes more sense. That helps me. It helps me a little bit.
So I guess they were the editors are just thinking, hey, we just need an establishing shot here. They're going to Chevy Chase. We already have it like written Chevy Chase on the screen. Let's just snap that up and move it over. Nicely done there. Oh, so this is where we meet Dr. Orgel. Is it Orgel? Sorry, Orgel.
Okay, yeah.
Orgel. Skinner and Mulder are sitting on the front porch. I do appreciate how Mitch Pledgey flinches at the lights because we've already kind of forgotten about his light sensitivity with everything else going on, but then he brings it back around. That's a nice little touch there. The doctor opens the door. He's very clearly like, you guys got to get the heck out of here. Something's going on.
I didn't. No, I didn't. No, I don't know Walter Skinner. Nope.
And Mulder's like, we're the FBI. You came to the FBI building. You were there. And he's like, nope. Just stop talking. Just don't.
Do you know what I really like about this? There's two things about this scene is that the differences between Mulder and Skinner. Like Mulder is like, as I said, a dog with a bone. He'll go after something and that will be it. So when he's at the door and he's going, I've been here before. You know, it's like, it's a callback to, like, as I say, something like Nicey, where, you know, he goes in, runs after the guy in the back of the thing. So there's callbacks to that.
Another diplomat, yeah. Yeah,
another diplomat. What I really like, I would say with that diplomatic kind of thing. So you've got Mulder doing the whole gun-ho, I'm going to get them. What do you mean, let him go kind of thing? But then Skinner's like playing the long game of, no, here's the details. I've taken the details down. Let's investigate it rather than just have this man. We're not after the man. We're after the system. And I just think that both sides, the Mulder and Skinner, is what really works. And it's something they do later on with Mulder and with Doggett and Skinner in a couple of episodes in season 8. So it's nice to see that difference in character because, you know, you've got Mulder who's going to go out there gun-ho. He needs that reining in, and Skinner's a perfect one as well as Scully that do that. And it's just nice to see that that version of them.
Right. Because by the time Mulder comes back with the chase, Skinner's got his ID and everything memorized. He knows exactly what he needs to do. He's on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it just would have been nice for me personally if, say, something, because it's not alluded to or mentioned in the entire episode, but if there was some mention of Rausch or something like that would have like clicked and gone, oh, hang on a second, this is about the X-Files, you know, this is something. But they keep it abstract enough, right. Which I suppose they have to because of the reveal at the end. I suppose you can view it from that point of view. And the fact he's Tunisian, is that enough for deep divers like myself to go, oh, Tunisia, you know? So that's, but it's nice that they've done that.
Right. Every time I see this scene, I'm worried about Skinner, but also all I can think of is because you've got that swelling Fight the Future theme going on, and it totally takes me out. I'm like, cornfields, Mulder and Scully. Yeah. All I can think of when I see is you got Skinner in pain and something's obviously going on. He's in trouble. And all I can think of are giant Jiffy Pop poppers in my mind.
You see, I think for me, the music does take me out, but that particular bit, I actually think the music's...
It's fitting.
But you're right. It's like, it's Jiffy Pop poppers or whatever they're called. But yeah, it does. It does. It's just those elements take me out of the you know, as I say, with the Chevy Chase. Fair enough. You know, we've got a reason for that now. But the music and stuff does take me out. But the Skinner's neck aspect and the music chosen actually does work. And if you don't know the film, then fair enough.
In the next scene, the important thing is Scully finds some stuff in Skinner's blood. Is it rocks? I don't know. Maybe something has settled to the bottom of his blood. But that's the important thing there. Also, her face.
Yeah, go with that. But yeah, you're right. It's just more of it's a lot of exposition, isn't it? Really, just to get to the point. It's no one's touched the blood. There's something wrong with the blood. That there's something deeper within it. So yeah.
And in the next scene, we get Mulder finding a photo of Dr. Orgel and Senator Matheson, so he knows where he needs to go next.
You know, even though I've not watched this episode for ages, the one thing that when I saw the picture in the bin, it just suddenly came back to me. It was like, "Hello, Senator." That's all. I actually said it out loud. I was like, "I know this is coming."
Script.
I know it's in the script, but it was. But watching it, I didn't read the script before watching the first episode viewing. And I was like, I know it's coming. Hello, Senator. Yeah. And then I had a second guess. I was like, oh, does he say that? And then it came over. I was like, yes, he does.
Yes. That's it. Next scene, Scully and Dr. Plant talking about the blood again. Shout out for Scully's hair. Boom.
You're just reading notes now.
Yeah,
like,
I am.
Scully's acting. Shout out for Scully's hair. Next. So this is the scene coming in when we see Senator Matheson, where I'm talking. This is where it kind of comes round to me with what we're saying with the general story, because he talks about the WHO. He talks about the World Health Organization here and elements that would have a connection to the conspiracy and and as I say, the conspiracy of like the control or subjugation or even basing it on weapons, because he says about the fact that Senator Matheson is basically stuck, and this is where the mirror of Matheson and Skinner comes in, that we're realizing that Matheson is actually, we haven't seen him since Little Green Men. I don't think we've seen him since then. I don't think we have seen him after Little Green Men. So, and obviously our receivables recently,
Very
it's in
sad.
a bit of state, which is not nice to hear. But and I like that they bring Matheson into play here, because he's having the same kind of crisis as what Skinner's having, and it's a nice reflection on that.
Dark intrigue, that phrase very much stood out to me. Did it stand out to you?
It
As
did.
something would anybody actually say that? My involvement in such dark intrigue. No, nobody talks like that. But that just makes me think that this whole little speech he gives here, and I feel this way sometimes about Skinner too, is they know they're being listened to. I feel like they are speaking not to Mulder or Scully or whatever when it happens, but they are speaking to whoever they assume is listening to them, because they are aware of this conspiracy. They're aware that they're being watched constantly and they have to be careful. And I think this speech was for that purpose.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. You should say that, because it's not something that's not they've not done before with the whole back thing back in the day. By turning the music up and actually talking about this thing. So they are obviously both characters who are risk averse and that nature. I never thought about it in this particular scene though, but it is interesting they can say that. The dark intrigue, I think, from a writing perspective, they're trying to give that subconsciousness of like, he's a senator, he's a statesman, isn't it? It's that kind of statesman kind of speech that someone might use these words as a statesman would do. But I can see both ways. Actually,
it just feels very theatrical to me. And I think like both of those things put together make sense. I don't think one has to negate the other, but
no.
Yeah. Next scene, Embassy Row Garage. Skinner, lots of action here. I do love how Skinner tricks him.
Can we just mention, and then we can just skip over the rest of them, the amount of times that a parking garage or car park is used throughout this episode?
Yes. Lots of stuff happening.
In car parks. I mean, talk about trying to get back to an X-File feel from pre LA by just using as many car parking locations as physically possible.
But that's where all the shady stuff happens in Washington, D.C. Don't you know that, Kurt?
No. It has done ever since Deep Throat, hasn't it,
really? Okay. Very conveniently, a nurse comes in to tell Scully and Dr. Plant that a Walter Skinner has been picked up somewhere and taken to DC General. It's very conveniently. She just was listening and knew the name.
Had the radio call on the
and knew that they were like looking at Walter Skinner's blood. This is our scene here where we've got the operation going on. I don't know what reason they would take his arms off, but I'm not a medical doctor, so I don't know.
No. Scully is though.
Scully is. She's a
Scully
doctor. A medical doctor.
It's like, I'll tell you what, we're sick of Scully saying that she's a medical doctor. Let's get Dr. Plant to say that she's a doctor. Yeah. What? Why do you have to say? Who is this person? Get out of here. She's a doctor. Okay. Yeah, and I'm a surgeon.
Oh.
Can we just started saying that? Just like, she's a doctor. I'm a surgeon.
I'm a nurse.
I'm a nurse. I'm an anesthesiast.
Now that we know who everybody is.
Yeah. Can we cut this person's arms off? No.
So we cut to FBI building. I don't know where you got your transcript, Kurt, but does it say Scully with very wrong hair? Oh, never mind. It's not Scully. Skinner's assistant gets off the elevator and enters her office. I like the whole description of the fact that Arlene Pledgey is Scully with very wrong hair.
Is that from the X-Files wiki? Is that where you got it from?
Yeah.
Yep. Arlene. I think she does really well here. I actually, she's got a bit of chemistry with David Duchovny, I think. But then everyone does, apparently, so.
Definitely got some chemistry with her boss.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Can we just talk about real quick the fact that Mulder just picks up some fucking mail off his desk and opens it? That is Skinner's mail. That is a federal offense to open somebody else's mail.
Desperate calls for desperate measures.
And she doesn't even say anything. She's not even just like, can you not?
Well, to be fair, she has just walked in on him and all the drawers are upside down. It is just a mess in there.
Well, she knows Mulder. This is a very far cry from Kirsch's assistant. Kirsch's assistant is tough, and she's not going to put up with anything.
No.
And Skinner's assistant knows them well enough to know.
She's like, oh, what are they doing now?
Yeah. Like, something must be going on. Something's wrong with my boss. She cares about Skinner.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Anyways.
Scully with wrong hair.
Scully with wrong hair. Following up with this scene, there's a lot going on with this next scene. Mulder and Scully are talking, and how sweet. Mulder says, well, can you fight it? And he's just like, he just wants to help. He just wants Skinner to get better.
It's interesting, this one as well, because you feel that Scully, it's the fact that Mulder doesn't really know what's happening. He's got bits of the puzzle, and Scully's got the final bit of the puzzle, with the whole nanotechnology thing. He's not quite made that leap yet, and that's something that Mulder would normally do. He'd make the leap to it's got to be nanobots. These have been mentioned in various different aspects, but it's when they said about technology and Scully starts to go, well, actually, it might. I do like that. I think that it proves that they both need each other just to be able to kind of pull the information they've both obtained from different aspects and brought together. Because this is obviously an episode, and we see it when Skinner's been taken around on the trolley and Scully's talking to her, that they're doing the thing which they usually do, which is they've split up and they're doing different aspects. Scully's in the hospital and Mulder's out gallivanting. But Scully's in the hospital this time not because of her, but because of Skinner. Very
character appropriate.
Yeah.
And plot point, Skinner's phone rings in his pocket and they answer it. Because you could do that back then. You could answer somebody's phone back then without having their fingerprint or whatever, their passcode. We find the bearded man getting up to some business. At what point did you realize, or did you? Do you remember the first time you saw it? Was it a surprise to you?
I think the phone call was potentially where I might have started to get it, because I was so into Krychek, obviously with this story, that you hear his voice and it's like he's trying to mask it, but he's not. It's like Senator, blah 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 blah. It's like, is that Krychek? It was kind of like, or if it wasn't like, is that Krychek? It's like, okay, there's somebody. It's somebody I know now. Yeah. So I would be lying if I said I knew. But,
right.
I don't recall, but I think my natural instinct would be around the phone call would be where I would start to wonder.
Similar for me. I don't remember exactly, but I know it was the eyes, because you can't mistake Nick-Lee's eyes and that shadowy glint he has. Those are he's got very distinctive eyes. But I do feel like they did a really good job disguising him so far.
Yeah. Well, it feels like to me as well that you were talking about the slow motion stuff before, that if you watch the opening scene with Skinner and Krychek because I've mentioned him now because we're there, is that is played pretty much at full speed, and it's quick enough that you don't really know because you're too busy concentrating on the boxer, so you don't really see it. Whereas when we go back to it, it's slowed down, so you can see it. So I think that obviously that the earlier ones where it is slowed down, one is a film trick to make you aware that you are seeing the past as such, because everything's slowed down, so it's a different time frame rate and whatever, because it makes you feel like, oh, we're in different. It's like when you have flashbacks in black and white, it's the same sort of thing. You know it's a flashback because it's in a different colour. And I think it's done deliberately there because you're going to be going back to scenes which will maybe played at full speed, which will be better at slow speed when you're doing the reveal.
My opinion is, if you don't know that it's Krychek and you're not expecting him, they did an excellent job of keeping him hidden and disguising him.
You'd have to be I mean, nowadays you would have to do this in a one episode because people would just get it. You know, there's been a problem one with Star Trek Discovery where they had multiple episodes, and I've heard debates about this character who was a made up actor, and he was playing two roles, one in like Klingon uniform, so he couldn't really make it out. And if you had no inkling about it whatsoever, you probably wouldn't get it. And it was like 9 episodes. But the internet was rife with trying to work out who he was, and says, "This is actor. We've never seen him before. He's only got one IMDb credit. What's this? What's that?"
Nice. So they even put it in the IMDb. That's great.
Yeah, they put it in the IMDb.
Nice.
Yeah. So the fact of something like this now, I think audiences are probably waiting for that. They're expecting that. Whereas in this era, apart from your Mission Impossibles, I don't think there's that much of these kind of reveals, these kind of like shocks and twists at the end. So I think it is done, and I think it is done to a point where you can there's times, there's like looks, or there's like a little bit longer frames, a few more frames here and there, then you get the voice, so there's clues right through, so at some point someone is going to click. But I would say the majority of people probably wouldn't get it until the reveal with the, you know. And the only thing I say about the end, I know we can get to there in the end, but I think the timing of the Skinner, what's this about Krychek, and then he's in darkness for ages before he comes out. It would have been nice if just for him to come out, you know, without Skinner saying it, you know, and then he would have said, "What's this about Krychek?" and then finish it. I think the timing was maybe a bit off for me personally on that end scene, but
let's talk about that when we get there, because I think I might agree with you. Mulder one-liner when he's with this car technician garage guy: "Don't hate me because I'm beautiful." They find the wig hair in the car, so they're getting closer. They're putting the clues together, and then Senator Matheson goes to this place, and we find Dr. Orgel with the same stuff as Skinner has. Yeah,
so Krychek has brought him there to basically I think he must know that Mulder's onto them, because he's brought him there particularly so he can see that you've got Senator Matheson in the place of the crime to bring out the fact that Matheson is there. Matheson's playing the card of, "I'm a victim." And this is where the relationship between Matheson and Skinner kind of comes in here, because Matheson, people would argue this is not really in type of character, but I feel that Matheson's fallen into this trap purely by accident. And the fact that, you know, he's being pushed upon, and, you know, because of his inaction on certain things, or, you know, the fact that he's being controlled in this way is interesting. But Skinner has been through this before, and he's more, he tries to stay in the center, like he says in the episode, but it kind of falls apart. But he wants to be the one that helps, but he's in a balancing act there. Matheson's in the same position, but Matheson goes the other way. He's like, "I've got to give up. I can't do anything. My hands are tied. I've got to fall into this horrible conspiracy about X, Y, and Z." Because if people die, they've got to die because, you know, there's no other way around it. Where I don't think Skinner would be like that, and hence the reason why Skinner's being held control over his life rather than actually just being controlled the way that I know a conspiracy would, which would be through the story of their of the makeup of who they are, because you can control somebody that way, but Skinner's not a person that's willing to be controlled that way.
I love it. Love it. Coming up in this next scene. Oh, this is probably my favorite scene in the whole episode. What do you think about this? Skinner and Scully talking together. They get a moment. There's a lot going on here. I like that he says he's going through all this stuff, and then she's being a medical doctor and everything, but then he says, I think I owe you an apology. Your quest, it should have been mine. And he goes through and he's basically kind of doing a little bit of the same thing as it made me think of Kitten again.
Yeah.
Brought that back, that he's trying to explain himself, and then he says, I'm not the kind of ally that I could have been. That's a big admission from him.
Well, yeah, and especially because you think about the reason why, because the whole reason why was because he wanted to save Scully. The reason why, the effects of zero sum and the position that he was in at that point, he was being controlled like Matheson is now. He could have been a better ally, but if he thinks about it, what other choice did he have at that time? He stopped Mulder from being. This is why I think it's more of a myth-arc thing, really, because he stops Mulder from making that choice in Redux. He stops him, and then he goes and does it himself, and has the repercussions of zero sum. So the fact that he thinks this is his final kind of throw of the dice kind of thing, and the fact that he's like, I'm not the ally that I could have been. I should have been stronger in that moment. I should have have faith in what you and Mulder were doing. But at the end of the day, he wanted to save someone's life, and that's the type of character he is. And the fact that he got stuck between the two worlds, and has to walk this center line, which is never going to hold, which is the kind of theme of the episode, is kind of really interesting, because it's what other choice did he have? That's the question, really. Yeah.
And I think it's interesting that he chooses this moment to say it, because as far as he knows, he's dying. And so he thinks that it's safe. He knows he's in the hospital. He's just with Scully. He feels like he's safe telling her these things in this moment.
Yeah. And it's nice that it's Scully as well. It's nice that Mulder's had that. Mulder's had the one-to-one. Now Scully's getting this one-to-one.
We go back to Senator Matheson and Mulder, and they're in a warehouse. And there's more stuff, mythology stuff that I don't really understand. Kurt, help me out.
So this is what I was saying. This is kind of the stuff that Matheson he's been brought here by Krychek so that he's implicated in the whole thing, so that Mulder won't trust him. It's kind of like the fact that Orgel was going to be going to Skinner to talk about these discrepancies, these exports that are happening, and all the stuff that I mentioned before. The fact it's nanotech technology is being used, and Mulder saying that these machines can be stopped. It's all kind of like talking about the fact that lethal people are involved. That you've got this conspiracy of people. If you start to pursue this, they're going to kill you. They've done it with Orgel to prove to Senator Matheson, you've got to toe the line here. And then put him in that situation with Mulder. And then obviously this is where Matheson's realising, he's saying, in desperation, saying, it's my role. What do you mean it's my role? He doesn't see himself as a facilitator of it. He doesn't see that. He's just trying to survive. And, it's stuff that, I would say, kind of alludes to the reflection of Skinner in this, because he's trying to do what he's done, because he's not a bad character. It's great to see him again. It's great to see him back. But the fact that he's playing the victim here is, I am the victim. Don't understand that. I'm fighting for my life. I'm trying to self-preservation of my life. Mulder wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
Mulder was like, he would die for his cause, whereas Matheson's not in that position. He's a senator. He's designed to compromise. He's designed to debate and work around things, and where possible leak information to Mulder. He's not a player on that grand scale. But with the fact that, I mean, obviously, being an American, more about the Senate and things like that than I do. But the fact that you've got someone in that power, that you need to get this resolution through for the work to continue as such, which is kind of a formal thing, but it's the stuff that's happening around that formal agenda. If that work stops because they haven't got the funding, then the nefarious stuff around it that stops as well, and that's what they want to stop.
I think you pretty much nailed it there, Kurt. You got it. Yeah.
Does that make sense to you now?
It does. Yeah.
Okay.
And I did like the kind of the comparison of Matheson sort of being older, and maybe he's kind of, Mulder is what Matheson could have been had he had more misfortune in his life and had so much more taken away, because Mulder became what he is. He's on this mission. He has this drive because of Samantha and because of everything that's been done to Scully and all of that. And I think Matheson is the way he is because he knows about all the conspiracies and he's involved in it, but he hasn't had the drive that Mulder's had.
No, and I think Matheson has information that is stuff that he doesn't believe in, but he's not been actively involved. He's like he is literally the term bit part player. He's somebody that people can use when they need him, and he hasn't actively been involved in the conspiracy as such, but he's aware of elements within the government that, you know, he's aware of certain things, and he's leaked that to Mulder in the past. There's no stakes for him.
Exactly.
In that role.
That's
so the fact that
stakes.
So the fact that he's now compromised, because all they've done is they've moved him into a position where he is compromised because SR-819, that bill has to be passed. It's going through the thing. Skinner's the one that's been given the role. Why is Skinner being given that task is an interesting question in itself. But when they've realised that Orgel is going to Skinner to do what Matheson would normally do, they're trying to stop it, and the only way they can do that is like, oh, what patsy can we use this time?
Yeah,
that's basically the story, isn't it? It's using a patsy, really.
Exactly, he's a pawn. And the minute that he gets put in the hot seat, he just completely crumbles and folds.
Yeah, because as you say, there's no stakes for him.
Did you think when Mulder says nanotechnology, microscopic atom-sized machines can be stopped? I immediately thought of War of the Copperphages, where he steps on the bug.
Right, yeah. Well, I think that this is where the kind of the Twilight Zone and Outer Limits thing comes in, because it's a bit more science fiction than X-Files have gone down the route of before. I don't think it's too bad because we don't really focus on the machines, and I think that's a very X-File thing to do. I think Twilight Zone might have used the nanobots in a different way, but the fact that it's not saying it's nanobots as such, it's like nanotechnology. It's not saying they're sentient life or anything like that at all, which would be, you know, in the Twilight Zone, there might be that these nanobots would form a life form or whatever. They're using this as like, it's nanotechnology. It's designed for this. I don't even know. They don't even mention what it's designed for, which I like. I like that. I like that you don't really know what it's designed for. And the thing you can talk about, like I was saying, is it control? Is it, you know, weapons? Is it what is this technology being used for? It's kind of like the atom bomb kind of thing situation, isn't it? It's kind of that kind of thing.
Jurassic Park, maybe. They didn't stop to think if they should.
Yeah. So it is asking those questions, and I like that. This is the first real one. There'll be episodes that's happened like this before, but this one for me felt like we're starting to head down that science fiction route, which season 6 tends to start to develop more, and they're trying new things. But I think this is on the right verge. I think this is still on the grounded route of, and I think the Dr. Plant says this about it's a heart attack. It's developing a heart attack. That's what it's doing. And so it's not like these machines are running wild. It's like these things are going to cause someone harm. And it's very grounded in that, with regards to that. So I think that works really well.
Right.
Because of that. It's more grounded. It's more about the person it's affecting rather than the machines itself.
At the end of this scene, Matheson is screaming, "It's too late, Fox! It's too late!" He's just screaming as Mulder storms away. Oh.
Definitely my quotable line for much of the X-Files is, "I will stop this," and looking back and pointing. I love that. I love that.
It's brilliant.
I'm not too old fade. I think it's a good shot with Matheson in silhouette, but I do love the way that Mulder's walking away and turns around and points at him saying, "I will stop this." It feels, I remember when I was younger thinking, oh, it's a bit forced. I've seen better. But the more I think about it, the more I'm like, I like that line. It's all right.
Good.
It's nice. It's a nice thing of like, I think the delivery of the line isn't as strong as what, because he's not as, it's played really interestingly, because I think if it was something to do with Scully, the emotional, I will stop this would have come in. This is a very reserved anger. You know, it's like, you know what I mean? Rather than it being like an emotional anger, it's more reserved. Like, this is wrong. You know, I will stop this. Whereas it had been something to do with Scully, it'd have been a bit more like emotional and felt more visceral.
Next scene, Skinner on the table.
Is that all you got to say? Just Skinner on the
Flatline.
table. You just stopped. You went, next scene, Skinner on the table.
Okay, we've got the theory from Tithonus coming up that Scully's immortal, but what about Skinner? He's died, 2 times that we know of now? This is the second time.
So far.
He's flatline. He was dead. He had an out of body. I think he's immortal. More than Scully. I think he's a vampire. No.
Well, he keeps dying and being resurrected. So, where Scully just doesn't die. Oh, she dies, doesn't she? She dies that one time because she's effectively dead when they transfer that over. But that's for me to talk about next week.
Don't want to step on your toes, buddy. But then magically, boom, comes back to life. It never stops. The tension, the plot twists. This episode is rife with plot twists.
Yeah.
Last scene, we've got Mulder and Scully here with Skinner in Skinner's office. Can we just talk about the lighting in this scene? It was just spot on for a second. It was just beautiful. Beautiful lighting in this scene. Just perfect. But yeah, Skinner's recovery is a miracle. But after all that stuff that he said to Scully, he does a complete 180. And I have a theory about that.
Go for it.
It's harkens back to what I said with Matheson and being listened to. So if you notice, every time Skinner is in his office and he's talking to Scully and Mulder in his office about something, he acts this way.
Well, there's a VHS videotape, isn't there? That's been in there before or after. I think it's after, isn't it? Because he gives it to Krycek at some point in a future episode.
He knows that he's being recorded.
Yeah, it's played with that stilted line because it goes back to the norm, and I think that I thought that actually I didn't think it so much in the Matheson quest in one, but I do actually think that he is being monitored at this point, purely for the fact that he is being monitored and someone's got a switch now. The only issue that you've kind of got with this, and it's more of the trope of Skinner being told the line a little bit more, it's just like, oh, we've been through this again, but I think I wouldn't have as much of an issue with this. I'm like a broken record here, but if they'd done something a bit more substantial with it moving forward, because it's not a case of him towing the line between them two. I don't necessarily think it needed to be with Mulder and Scully. It needed to be for something that Krycek wanted, not to do with Mulder and Scully in the X-Files. It's something, because Krycek is an interesting character because he flows in and out. He ebbs and flows depending on what he wants. So to have somebody on his side unwillingly, which would be a Skinner, is great. Would be a great story to tell, because of the fact that Skinner would be involved in all these different things, and it doesn't have to fall back on that. It could fall back purely on what Krycek was doing. Hence the reason why we need Marita and Krycek. So,
are we taking notes on this? Because I think we have a show.
Yeah, I've always wanted that show. I always remember.
Let's do it.
I don't know who's talking about Requiem. I'll be very surprised if it's not Cathy. To be honest, I think she's hinted enough that she likes Requiem, or she'll be involved in that at some point. But that it just at the end of Requiem, I honestly thought that's the way they were going, and I was like looking forward to seeing that happen. And obviously, that's not the way they went. And I know that there was a question mark on whether or not to do that. Yeah, it was disappointing when that didn't happen. But that's for a future episode. But that's why I feel that it certain shows recently, TV shows for me, have gone from can have everything revolves around Mulder and Scully. Great, fantastic. It's you've got the conspiracy behind the scenes of like it's massive events happening, but it's about Mulder and Scully. A lot of sci-fi now is going like the end of the universe is happening, and it's like, can we just have something that's based on a character rather than like the end of the universe, please? Can we just have like, you know, this world or something is going to collapse, or you know, we're going to dire straits because of this thing happening, this catastrophic for a person. But with this episode, I think it would have been nice to have episodes moving forward. It would have just been nice to have Skinner and having his issues, and a Krycek being the control over him, and not really involving Mulder, Scully, X-Files, but it's more about Krycek's own development and how his fight between the Syndicate or whatever he may be doing in the future. That's what I would have gone for.
I love it. Also, the way Mitch Pileggi portrays Skinner here and in the next scene in the parking garage, I really appreciate how he is able to switch so well between professional Skinner and personal Skinner. I mean, because you've got Avatar where he like comes in and he's with his ex-wife and he's just like got the sleeves rolled up and he's completely relaxed. You've got him in the hospital where he's completely and utterly vulnerable. And then you've got the office where he's like straight back, chin down, all business work Skinner. I really like that he is so flexible in his acting skills.
Again, you had to put a couple of extra words in there.
Here it is, the big moment we've all been waiting for. Skinner in parking garage.
Parking garage, isn't that a surprise?
I just love this whole scene. Skinner, he says, I've been expecting you to show up. And we know there's that computer pad. The bearded man who is no longer bearded. Oh, short hair. You get that little glimpse of that short hair.
And that's it.
Just.
So you think the same as me then? That it should have been, what do you want from me? What's this about?
I would have liked to have seen, you know, I can push the button at any time. What do you want from me? And then a hint of the shadowy, that's where we get like the face, you know, and all, and he like leans forward a little bit. I would have liked to have seen his face, and then that line, what's this about? Krycek?
It doesn't have it doesn't have the bounce.
While it's honest.
Yeah, because it doesn't have the it's like kind of moment, but it's laid out for you where I would have liked to have seen it myself, because that way fans of the show would have instantly got it. And then you use the name afterwards for people who had maybe the people who would just jump in and out and go, oh, who's Krycek? And then when they research it, they'd have found that the David Train and all kinds, and got confused with Dave Krycek rather than Alex. So, I mean, Steve Skinner, obviously that's very confusing, Steve Skinner. But
it is.
Yeah. I wonder if Steve Skinner's had any near-death experiences then. You know, he likes to go out there and do skydiving and all that kind of things, doesn't he? So, a bit adventurous.
Wasn't there that episode of the Davy Train where it was bungee jumping. It wasn't
bungee
skydiving.
Jumping, yes, that's right.
Was that season 12?
Yeah, but Steve Skinner has a near-death experience every single episode, doesn't he? There's always something where he almost dies.
He's a man of action. What can I say? Kurt, let's go to the mailbag and see what we've got.
Let's do that.
Okay, we got some good comments on here. Our Cathy, hi Cathy. She says, this is my favorite Skinner-centric episode. The scene where Mulder is relentlessly concerned about Walter, even calling Scully in to check him out, shows off the dynamics of their relationship in a wonderful way. I love seeing Mulder and Skinner investigating together, although too briefly, and Scully doing her thing in gorgeous scrubs. And anytime Krycek shows up, I'm happy. While the episode starts off strong and fast-paced, I feel it sort of fizzles out, and the end could have been stronger. Still, it's an episode I always enjoy watching. Cathy, how could you think the end could have been stronger with a plot twist like that? Come on. You know I love you, Cathy. Okay. Carl Neer says, always fun to see Krycek show up, but Skinner as the focal point is something to be relished at every opportunity. Yes, Carl? The reusing of the score from Fight the Future was always noticeable for me, as I practically wore the CD soundtrack of the film out at the time.
Yeah, I think we all did that.
We did. Luke Winch. He says, a welcome change in tone for season 6 and one of my standout episodes for this season. Full of genuine tension and excitement with a race against time. This one always sticks in my mind. My only problem with this episode, though, is I'm not happy where the writers took Senator Matheson. I found his betrayal and character decisions shoehorned in and not true to what has come before. My memories of Matheson will be him turning up Bach for a conspiratorial 1-to-1 with Mulder. Not this. But the episode remains a good one nonetheless.
Yeah, so...
We love those conspiratorial 1-to-1s with Mulder.
Oh, absolutely. I think the terrible person aspect, I think we've talked about it on the show, didn't we? It was more like, I can see why they're saying that, because it is a big turn up, but I think because it's more a reflection on where Skinner and Matheson are, that they've used him for that, because Matheson was a friend to the FBI, to the X-Files, and Skinner is a friend to the X-Files, but they both have to be put into these difficult positions. So, yeah, I can see the understanding why Matheson, but he has been put into a difficult position, and as we've said, where's his stakes? He hasn't got the stakes, so he's just kind of floundered. Now, that in itself might be a character trait that you can't really accept from that senator, but the argument we make, I think, is quite a strong one. That's the reason, really, is there's nothing to drive him.
Paige Schechter, it's crackling good fun. I remember how excited I was for it during the original run. They slowly but surely give you the chance to figure it out. They waste the impact of the final moments later, but for now, it's an awesome X-Files variation of cinema's DOA. Awesome ep for Mitch and Skinner. Do you think she means when they waste the impact of the final moments, you think that's what we mentioned? That he says cry check?
Either that, but I think she may be referring to the fact that to figure it out. I think Paige probably, I wouldn't be surprised if Paige figured it out early, or, mid episode, something like that, maybe. So the impact isn't as much. But I think, yeah, she is. But I think for the casual viewer, or somebody who just watches it the once, and maybe I can't mind when Krychek was last in. Patient X, Red and the Black. It'll be, won't it? At the end, he's in the end. He's the driver in the end, isn't he? So his last appearance was taxi driving, manicured man round in the end, and that's the last we saw of him. So we saw him 9 episodes and 1 film ago. So yeah, so it's not too long ago in distant memory, but yeah, I think that's maybe what she's saying, that for those people who rewatch it all the time, you could probably pick it up.
Yeah. We've got our great and powerful Mr. Black. He says, after Zero Sum, hands down the best Skinner episode the X-Files has ever done. Easily. After all the comedy so far in season 6, it's a great change in pace, a dark, conspiratorial thriller that teeters on the edge of the myth arc without quite being part of it. Granted, it's probably got too little Skinner for an episode entirely about him, but it's got the 70s conspiracy thriller angle I really dig. Plus, Senator Matheson, a way overdue return. Also, that final twist reveal at the end I remember loving back when it aired, even if the whole plot that comes of it never really amounts to anything. But yeah, great stuff, plus some ace reusing of Fight the Future score here too.
Yeah, so he likes that. So that's good. That's good.
Mm-hmm.
As I say, I think I mentioned this in the episode as well, just the one on the neck works. Obviously, Jiffy Job pop-poppers, as we said, but I think it might have been overused a little bit for my taste.
Oh, this is an interesting comment we'll put this our last one. Andrew Levitt. SR-819 is a welcome return to form for the show after a long run of subpar comedic episodes. The dark tone return of Skinner and government officials working in the shadows as Skinner joins Mulder and Scully to figure out what they have done to him, make the episode feel like a classic Vancouver episode. And the twist at the end is suitably sinister. After the Pine Bluff variant, this is easily John Shiban's next best script. An excellent episode and one of the best of season 6.
Yeah, that's a good point with Pine Bluff variant, because I know we were talking about our future of the X-Files post season 6 and the conspiracy kind of thing. I mean, Pine Bluff variant is kind of another one that links in quite well with that. that we've got the thing on the money. So you could run those conspiracy ones which are not related to the main conspiracy, or you could have a new conspiracy with something that Shaban's done here with both those two episodes, and use that as a platform to build on post 2 hours one sun, like I keep going on about. So it's it would have been nice to see that, and it's interesting that because you're seeing like a divergence of the fandom at this point, because season 5, you've got like the Bad Blood, everyone loves it. You've got Jose Chung's from Outer Space, most people adore it, some people hate it. It's one of those episodes. Clyde Buckman obviously is a well-loved favourite, and they were scattered few and far between. The difference with season 6 is that you've got 8 episodes. The beginning, a conspiracy, kind of alien on the loose kind of story. You've got Drive, and then you've got these episodes of like the looser Rain Kings, triangles of how it goes to Christmas of this world. And it feels that Levitt's saying, come back. We're going back to more of that, going back to that season 2, season 3 feel to it. But obviously with this Pine Bluff variant as well, which is a good call.
Definitely. I love Pine Bluff variant. That's
episode.
Another one that I really love and I don't watch enough.
Yeah. And it's got some continuity in post episodes. So
yeah, amazing. Michael Little says, pretty good. It is a welcome change of pace from all the comedy episodes in season 6. It looks and feels like classic X-Files. Unfortunately, I really dislike the ending where Skinner seems to have learned nothing. Zero Sum is still my favorite Skinner episode.
All right. Well, I don't necessarily think he's learned nothing. He's just in a completely different situation. With Zero Sum, he's put into that predicament because he's made a choice, like he says in this episode. But in this episode, he hasn't got a choice because it's been done to him, and he's been put in that position.
Yeah.
And I think that's the point. It goes back to the Matheson question. That's the point. Matheson's been put in that position and has a choice. He can fight that, or he can roll over and be dominated or subjugated for that. But Skinner doesn't have that choice here because he's been infected with this nanotechnology, and now he's being controlled. And the only what choice has he got? He's already made that choice. Actually, he's made that choice to die. So yeah, that's the only other thing. And I know you don't want that. That's the only choice that's left open to him is like either to die or to live. Wait, he hasn't.
Well, he has to, in order to be able to continue to help Mulder and Scully. He's not going to be able to help him if he's dead. Yeah. He's got to do what he has to do to stay alive so that he can try to help them when the opportunity arises.
And he's not going to say, and he's definitely not going to say at any point, because he doesn't know who's listening and when he's listening. And as you say, at the end scene, he's not going to go, by the way, I've got loads of little bits of bots in me that are going to kill me because Krychek's around the corner. Is he?
Yeah.
So...
All right, that'll do it for our mailbag. And thank you, everyone, for your comments. We appreciate you. Right. So I guess that's it, Kurt.
We did it. We finished. We finished this episode. What's the episode called again? I can't remember. It's so long ago.
Skinner.
Oh, we didn't speak about the car. We didn't speak about the banging car.
Wait,
the throbbing veins, banging car, and Walter Skinner, right? The banging car, the sheer force that's involved when he hits that car, when he's he's really struggling, and he backs back against the car, and you just see the dent in it, and it causes the alarm to go off. There's some brute force behind that.
Let's not talk about Skinner and his brute force. Okay. Maybe off here.
I think that's a good time to wrap it up then.
Kurt, where can we find you online, buddy?
You can find me on Twitter at rmuldrake. That's RMULDRAKE. Currently running alongside season 6 of this podcast. You've got the Millennium podcast, which I run. We're in the 3rd and final season, and you can find that over at The Time Is Now Pod, and you can find that at The Time Is Now Pod. I'm also on the Red Dwarf podcast, Shipwrecked and Comatose. You can find that at Red Dwarf Pod. And we should be, with Luke Winch, who's mentioned in the mailbag there, we are looking at Star Trek Picard and any season 2 news that we'll be talking about. And we have some specials which should be airing soon or might have aired at the time this goes out. So look out for our Star Trek Picard podcast, Make It So. And you can find that at Jean-Luc Podard.
Excellent. And as always, you can find the XCast online at the X_cast at Twitter. You can join us in our Facebook group at the X-Files Basement, the XCast Podcast fan group. And we're also on Instagram at the XCast Pod. You can find me on Twitter at Sarah L. Blair and on Instagram at author.sarah.blair. And you can check out my new novel that's out, Darkness Loves Company. That does it for us and Skinner. Kurt.
Yep.
Cheers, buddy.
No problem at all.
Always fun hanging out with you.
We will be back later in the season, as always. We've got some exciting episodes coming up, which I'm looking forward to. We might even invite our friend Carl on at one point.
Yep. And you're coming back next week with Tiffinus?
I am.
Is that right?
I am indeed.
All right. Well, until then, everyone, just remember, trust no one.
Elsewhere on We Made This. Frame to frame.
I mean, that was very nearly a James Stewart impression.
Oh, god damn it. There's supposed to be reindeer around here, but gosh darn it, I can't see them anywhere else. No gosh darn reindeer around here. Anyway, sorry.
That I would have loved to see. Bad Santa starring James Stewart is what I would absolutely have adored to see.
I'm just trying to imagine.
Completely going against type.
So, say there, Sonny, what would you like for Christmas there? That would just be
No, I don't care that we're recording the podcast. This is just for me now. Can you, as James Stewart, say the word fuckstick?
Free with this month's issue.
Last year's we had 6 CDs to choose from, one of which was a Christmas CD.
Yeah, we've got the remaining 5 because we fired one bullet on the Russian roulette.
Yep.
So last year we had Metal Hammer's Razor. So the remaining 5 in the chamber are X-Ray CD 11 from X-Ray magazine, Radio Kerrang Volume 1, Mojo's Blue Christmas, which is the bullet, at least for Ian anyway, Steve Lamac's Bootleg Session Volume 3 from Melody Maker, and Rock Sound Music with Attitude Volume 32.
Life's milestones.
With pet bereavement, you also have anticipatory grief a lot of the time if your animal is elderly or unwell. And oftentimes with animals, there's guilt involved. And that can be, have I taken them to the vet too soon? Or have I, waited too long? So there's all these feelings of grief which are just as valid in pet loss as they are in human.
I think to some extent there's an element of fear of stigmatisation as well. You feel this bad, but you don't want people to know because they might look down on you.
Check out all of these shows and more on the We Made This podcast network. The XCast and X-Files podcast was created by Tony Black and is produced and hosted by Carl Sweeney, Sarah Blair and Kurt North.
You can find the podcast on Twitter at the X_cast, on Facebook by typing in the XCast, and in our group, X-Files Basement, the XCast podcast fan group, and on Instagram at the XCast pod.
Don't forget, you can support the show by becoming a member on Patreon. Our patrons get early access to episodes, behind-the-scenes chats with our hosts and a thriving community of X-Files, and other premium interviews and specials. To find out more and subscribe, you can go to patreon.com/thexcast. That's patreon.com/thexcast.
We are also part of the We Made This podcast network, full of popular culture shows, including our Millennium series, The Time Is Now. You can find all of our shows at our website, wemadethispod.com, or via Twitter at wemadethispod.
Thanks for listening and keep watching the skies.